A cow, its sleek brown coat matted with sweat and dust, writhed helplessly on the ground. Its desperate struggle was futile against the crushing embrace of an African rock python. A monster of muscle and scale coiled tightly around its torso. Each panicked breath the cow took was weaker than the last, serving only to tighten the python's grip. The world was narrowing to a single point of suffocating pressure. Suddenly, a sound ripped through the air. A deep, resonant roar that was not of a lion. From the dense cover of nearby acacia trees, a colossal silverback gorilla burst forth. It moved with a speed and purpose that seemed impossible for a creature of its size. Without a moment of hesitation, the gorilla charged directly at the unfolding tragedy. It didn't slow its advance. It seized the python's head and neck with its two massive hands, pulling with all its might, attempting to wrench the predator's deadly hold from the dying cow. But just as this incredible battle of titans began, a primate against a reptile for the life of a mammal, the scene grew infinitely more complex. 4 male lions emerged from the tall grass in the distance. They moved with a fluid, confident gait, then stopped, forming a semicircle at a calculated distance. Their golden eyes were not fixed on the easy meal of the cow. They were locked onto the gorilla. What happened next would break every rule of nature you thought you knew. Hours earlier, the day had begun with a deceptive tranquility. The savannah, a rolling landscape of low green grass punctuated by the flat-topped silhouettes of acacia trees, was bathed in the warm morning light. A large herd of cows moved across this landscape, a flowing river of brown and white, but one among them could not maintain the rhythm. A young cow, weakened by a recent illness, found its legs growing heavier with each step. The pace of the herd, a rhythm set for collective survival, became an impossible standard. Slowly, inevitably, the distance between the lone cow and the safety of its family grew until it was utterly alone. Finding a small, quiet clearing, the cow began to graze, the simple act a small comfort in its isolation. It was unaware that it had wandered into a place of mortal danger. Near a large fallen log, camouflaged with breathtaking perfection, lay an African rock python. It was a creature of immense patience, a predator that did not need to chase its prey. It simply waited for prey to come to it. The python, motionless for hours, sensed the subtle vibrations of the cow's hooves in the earth. It remained perfectly still, its patterned skin making it nearly invisible against the decaying wood and dry grass. Not far away, in the sturdy branches of an ancient acacia tree, a magnificent silverback gorilla was going about its day. Its powerful hands skillfully stripped leaves and bark, its focus entirely on its meal. The gorilla was the undisputed king of its small territory, a being of quiet strength and contemplation, its world governed by predictable routines. The distant, vulnerable cow and the hidden, patient python were outside its sphere of concern. But the deceptive peace of the savannah was about to be shattered. With an explosive burst of energy, the python launched itself from its hiding place. In an instant, its powerful coils were wrapped around the cow's midsection, pulling the shocked animal to the ground with a heavy thud. The quiet clearing erupted into a scene of silent, desperate struggle, and the fragile balance of the savannah had just been violently broken. The faint sounds of the struggle, the panicked shuffling of hooves, the strain of a body fighting against immense pressure, traveled on the breeze. The sound reached the gorilla high in its acacia tree. It paused, its meal forgotten. Its intelligent eyes scanned the landscape, and its brow furrowed. This was not the sound of a predator making a clean kill. This was the sound of a prolonged and desperate fight for life. For a gorilla, this was not its concern. It was an herbivore, a peaceful forager. The violent dramas of predator and prey were simply part of the world it inhabited, but not a world it ever participated in. Yet something in that sound resonated. The gorilla descended from the tree with a fluid grace that defied its bulk. It moved toward the sound, its curiosity overriding its instinct to remain uninvolved. As it cleared a thicket of bushes, it saw the scene, the helpless cow, doomed, and the giant python tightening its lethal embrace. A fundamental choice presented itself. The law of the jungle was clear: the strong survive, the weak perish. The python had won its meal, but the gorilla did not turn away. In a display of something that went far beyond simple instinct, the gorilla let out a deafening roar and charged. It crashed into the scene, immediately engaging the predator. It grabbed the python's head, its powerful thumbs pressing into the reptile's skull, trying to find a leverage point to uncoil the beast. The python, shocked by this unprecedented intervention, released a loud hiss, its head striking out. The gorilla was relentless, planting its feet and pulling, its muscles straining in a raw contest of strength. It was a battle of two distinct forms of power, the gorilla's explosive, intelligent force against the python's unyielding, constricting might. As this desperate struggle raged, the very atmosphere of the savannah began to shift. The gorilla, focused entirely on its adversary, may not have noticed them at first, but they were there. The four lions, drawn by the commotion, had arrived. They were no longer distant figures on the horizon. They were here. Their presence cast a dark shadow over an already impossible fight. The arrival of the lions transformed the scene from a desperate rescue into a death trap. The four males did not rush in. Instead, they displayed the chilling intelligence of apex predators. They fanned out slowly and deliberately, forming a wide, inescapable circle around the central drama. The cow, the python, and the gorilla were now at the epicenter of a closing ring of power. The air grew thick with tension that was almost palpable. The lions were not merely watching. They were waiting, assessing the situation, letting their prey exhaust itself. The gorilla, fully aware of this new catastrophic development, showed no sign of fear. It released one hand from the python for a brief moment and beat its chest. A rapid, hollow thump that was a clear and unambiguous declaration. I am here. I will not yield. One of the lions, a large male with a magnificent dark mane, lowered its head and answered with a deep, rumbling roar that vibrated through the ground itself. The challenge had been made. An attack was now not a question of if, but when. From a distance of several hundred yards, a park ranger watched this entire unbelievable event unfold through a pair of binoculars. He had been on routine patrol when the gorilla's initial roar had drawn his attention. Now he sat in his jeep, utterly mesmerized and horrified. He was a man of science and observation, trained to understand that nature has a brutal, unfeeling calculus. His directive, his entire professional ethos, was to observe and not interfere. But what he was witnessing defied every textbook, every rule. This was not just predation. This was a heroic stand against all odds, about to be tragically overwhelmed. He saw the lions lower their bodies, their muscles tensing for the final rush. In that moment, the ranger faced a terrible decision. To obey his training meant watching the certain death of both the courageous gorilla and the cow. To intervene was to break the most sacred rule of his profession. His hand hovered over the ignition key. He took one last look through his binoculars at the gorilla, still fighting, still defiant against impossible odds. His choice was made. The engine of the jeep roared to life, a sound of metal and combustion in this primal world. He pressed his foot to the floor, and the vehicle lurched forward, charging not at one animal, but the entire circle of lions. The lions, shocked by the sudden charge of the loud, fast-moving machine, broke their formation in confusion and scattered into the safety of the trees. The thunder of the jeep's engine subsided, replaced by a tense quiet. The lions had vanished, their deadly threat neutralized by the most unexpected of interventions. But the original crisis remained. The cow was still trapped, and the gorilla was still locked in its struggle with the python. The ranger stopped the jeep a respectful distance away and got out. The dynamic had shifted one final time. The African rock python, a creature of pure instinct, assessed its new situation. Its intended meal was still there, but the fight had become too costly. It was now facing not one but two determined adversaries. Its survival instinct finally overrode its predatory drive. Slowly, grudgingly, the massive coils began to loosen. The pressure relented. With a final slithering motion, the python uncoiled itself from the cow and retreated into the dark safety of the undergrowth, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. In the clearing there were three figures: the man, the gorilla, and the cow. The gorilla stood over the cow, its chest heaving from the exertion. It looked at the ranger, and for a long, silent moment, there was no aggression, no fear. There was only a calm, a quiet acknowledgement that seemed to pass between them, a shared understanding of what had just transpired. The cow, exhausted but free, struggled and then found its footing, standing on wobbly legs. It had been saved by a chain of events so unlikely as to be miraculous. What happened on the savannah that day was more than just a fight for survival. The truly unthinkable act was not the lion's impending attack, but the profound, layered alliance that had saved a single life. It was the choice of a gorilla to fight a battle that was not its own. It was the choice of a man to break his own rules in the service of a higher compassion. This event challenges the simple idea of survival of the fittest, revealing a world far more complex, one where empathy can bridge the gap between species and where courage can inspire the most unexpected of allies. It reminds us that compassion is a universal language and that sometimes the most important role we can play in the natural world is not simply as observers, but as active participants in an alliance for good.